What are the best books on writing? What books should writers read to improve their craft? That's a really good question, and it was hard for me to choose the five best books on writing, and I don't claim to be the master expert at this. All I can say is that I've read a lot of books on writing. So, at the mention of books on writing, or writing books, most people's minds likely go one of two directions. Those whose primary writing work involves journalism, or business communication, or academic writing, almost certainly thought of The Elements of Style by Strunk and White, right? E.B. White and William Strunk Jr. I taught a lesson from this recently on style, pulled right from E.B. White's essay in there. Excellent book. I read that book on my own in my teens, reread it in a prose style class in college, which is one of the better writing classes I've taken, and I've read it several times since then on my own. And I used to see it on every manager's and director's desk when I worked in corporate America, because those dudes still could not write. And I've taught it to my own AP English Language and Composition class. So check out my video on style for some of the things you can learn from, again, this book, Elements on Style. But this is not one of the 5 books that I chose as my favorites. So, if you're a fiction writer, on the other foot, you'll likely proselytize for On Writing, a Memoir of the Craft by Stephen King. Might have heard of this little tome. It's a legendary text from a legend, and it tells the story of his life and his authorial career. It presents his concept of the writer's toolbox and lays out his process for writing stories, including his opinions on adverbs, passive voice, and pre-plotting a novel. So it's good stuff, but it's definitely geared more towards pantsers than plotters. So while it's a really good book and has some really valuable stuff in there, I don't think it's for everybody. Certainly not for every writer, not even for every fiction writer. But I think everyone can get something out of Stephen King. So, recommend it, but not in my top 5. So I will have plenty to teach from those 2 books down the road. I've already taught some from them. I'm going to teach them again. But here I'm going to tell you my personal top 5 books on writing. These are personal choices, the books that have best helped me as a writer. So I'm not making any claim for objectivity here. I'm not making any claim for being unbiased. These are all incredibly biased choices. But again, I've been a writer, a screenwriter, a playwright, a comic book writer. I've written pretty much in every genre. I've published stuff in most of the genres out there. And I've been a writing teacher for over 7 years. So I've read a lot about writing, done a lot of writing, learned a lot about writing, and these 5 books, I would say, are the ones that I return to the most often for writing advice. These are not the books that I read once and was like, whoa, that's great. These are the books that I pick up again and again and again to refresh my mind or to get some new detail of the craft geared in. So, the first one, and I'm going to present these in no particular order, so just take them as they are. First one is Ray Bradbury's Zen in the Art of Writing. Ray Bradbury, you might know him from such little novels as The Martian Chronicles or Fahrenheit 451. Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite authors of all time. And this book is just a collection of essays written over the course of 40 or 50 years in his career on writing. Zen in the Art of Writing is the title of one essay in there. But there's about a dozen essays there, all on writing, and a lot of that is on inspiration, finding your inspiration, coming up with ideas for stories, finding ways to tell stories in a different light, and looking at stories in a different light. A lot of thoughts on basically finding your muse in Bradbury. I'll probably do another video soon on finding your muse. Bradbury says, "You must stay drunk on writing so reality cannot destroy you. For writing allows just the proper recipes of truth, life, reality as you are able to eat, drink, and digest without hyperventilating and flopping like a dead fish in your bed." So, you can use just enough in writing not to kill yourself. Do it. Stay drunk on writing. Second book I would choose, my top 5 list, is On Writing Well by William Zinsser. If I were to give a book on style, on just the difference between good writing and mediocre writing versus bad writing, and trying to make your writing better, trying to improve its clarity and strength, it wouldn't be Elements of Style. Actually, it would be this book. I would still recommend Elements of Style, but the top book I would recommend is this one. I read a couple books in that prose style class, which was a journalism class that I took back in college, and my professor was a professional editor, formerly with National Review, so a big name editor, recognizable editor. He knew how to make writing good, and he kind of geared it into my brain how to write well by writing clearly. And this book was the second one he had us read. We read Elements of Style first, and then we read On Writing Well. And this is primarily a nonfiction, a book about writing nonfiction. William Zinsser is primarily a journalist, but I think it can apply to any writing. If Ernest Hemingway could become a huge success with journalistic style writing and create pretty much a genre on his own, I think all of us can learn to become better writers by learning to write clearly and write more effectively. Zinsser says, good writing has an aliveness that keeps the reader reading from one paragraph to the next, and it's not a question of gimmicks to personalize the author. It's a question of using the English language in a way that will achieve the greatest clarity and strength. So, this is all about, whereas Bradbury's book is all about inspiration and coming up with the material about which to write, this book is all about the writing itself. This book is about the language. And really, to me, I will say that these are in an order. Maybe they're not in a very particular order, but they are in an order for the aspects of writing that you need to apply them to. You need inspiration. You need something to write about. This book is great for that. You need to get your writing better. You need to get the words right. You need to work on your wording and your phrasing and your proper use of sentence structure and all of that. Great book for it here, and not a boring book either. This is a very entertaining, useful book. Highly recommend that read. My next book goes deeper into fiction. It's actually written for screenwriters. This is Christopher Vogler's The Writer's Journey, basing his work off of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey mythos, the monomyth, research that he did, as well as C.G. Jung's archetypes. The Writer's Journey is considered by many to be one of the Bibles of screenwriting, of writing for Hollywood. Vogler himself was a contributor to films like The Thin Red Line and The Lion King, the original one. So very, very useful. He's considered one of the gold mines of skill, of storytelling skill in Hollywood. And this book is all about structure. It's all about the hero's journey. It's all about creating stories that resonate with audiences and that resonate with readers. So it's not about being literary. It's about telling a story that connects to the human experience. As Vogler says, the hero's journey is not an invention, but an observation. It is a recognition of a beautiful design, a set of principles that govern the conduct of life and the world of storytelling, the way physics and chemistry govern the physical world. So, if you want to learn about structure, you want to learn about what makes a story work versus, when a story goes wrong, usually it's violated some rule of structure. If you want to learn what makes a story work, The Writer's Journey, Christopher Vogler. You're also going to learn a lot about characterization in there. It talks a lot about the character archetypes and how they interact with each other. My fourth book, this is, by the way, you've probably seen, if you've watched other videos on my channel, you've probably seen lessons from all of these books that I've taught at one time or another. If I haven't taught from them yet, I will be teaching from them eventually, but I've taught lessons from most of these books on this channel already. Stein on Writing. This is the first required book I ever gave in my creative writing class, and that's because this might be, if I were to pick one book on writing that encapsulates everything you need to know. There's no one book that encapsulates everything, but that best encapsulates the most of what you need to know. This would be it. This is a book is broken into several sections. It's got a section in there on fundamentals that apply to all types of writing, then a big section on fiction, another section on fiction and nonfiction, the kind of techniques that apply to both, and then a smaller section on nonfiction. Saul Stein was a legendary editor and playwright as well as novelist. He edited authors like James Baldwin, one of the greatest authors of the American language, of the English language, I should say, of the American experience in the 20th century. Stein is he's a legend, and he touches on everything you need to know about writing. He touches on stuff that you're going to get on Writing Well, he touches on stuff you're going to get in The Writer's Journey, he touches on stuff that Bradbury touches on. So I do think if there's one book that I'd recommend every writer read, it's this. I don't think it's dry. Some people do think it's a little drier because it does go in a little more detail, and he is writing for more literary writers, but his stuff is still very much, he wrote mysteries himself, so his stuff is very much geared into the common mind, and it is talking about writing as communication. As Stein says, we practice our craft to service the reader, not our psyches. The material we deal with may come from our observation and insight. As writers, we don't expel the result as raw material, we transmute it to provide what the reader most wants, an experience different from and richer than what he daily abides in life. So we come to writing, we read things, both fiction and nonfiction, to escape. It literally is, when people start accusing fiction of being escapist, it's like, well, duh, because we're not reading it to be in our own lives. We're reading it to go out of our lives. We're reading it to have an experience that is better than or richer or fuller than our day-to-day existence. All right? So that's what reading is all about. The reason that we're writing is to give our readers an experience that is more interesting, more relevant, more exciting, more than what they get in their day-to-day life. And then my last one, so these books are all written with certain people in mind. Ray Bradbury, he wrote novels and screenplays and plays, but primarily known, and poetry as well, but primarily known as a short story writer. And this book, if you're going to read a book as a short story writer to help you write short stories, this would be the best book to do it with, I'd say. This book, again, since there is a journalist, I think everyone can benefit from this book. But this book is written primarily for nonfiction writers, biographers, and journalists. So if you're going to write biography or journalism, this book. If you're going to write novels or plays, Stein on Writing. If you're going to write screenplays, movies, The Writer's Journey. Like, again, every one of these books will apply to every form of writing, but some of them were written with particular audiences in mind. Which is why I'm prefacing that. My last book is Writing for Comics by Alan Moore. Okay. This book is not just on writing comics. You may have heard of Alan Moore. He wrote such little books that achieved a little bit of fame, like From Hell and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and, V for Vendetta, and a little book called Watchmen, which made Time Magazine's 100 Greatest Novels of the 20th Century, the only comic to do so. And as part of the reason why I'm grabbing this is Alan Moore is not just a comic book writer. He is a writer's writer. He knows how to tell a story. And he's got actually one of my favorite quotes, this book right here, and it's a very short book. So I highly recommend this for every writer out there, but it's particularly any writer who wants to tell a story. It's not just for comic book writers. Oh, he's got a scorpion there. I get scorpions in my backyard. Ugh. Anyway, he didn't draw it. This is a kind of an illustrative little book. He did not draw it, but he wrote it. And it's more of an essay than a full-on book, but very much worth reading. Here's my favorite quote from writing. This is by Alan Moore from that one book. As I see it, a successful story of any kind should be almost like hypnosis. You fascinate the reader with your first sentence, draw them in further with your second sentence, and have them in a mild trance by the third. Then, being careful not to wake them, you carry them away up the back alleys of your narrative, and when they are hopelessly lost within the story, having surrendered themselves to it, You do them terrible violence with a softball bat and lead them whimpering to the exit on the last page. Believe me, they'll thank you for it. I absolutely love that quote on storytelling, and every little piece of advice that Moore gives in that is excellent for anyone who wants to write comics, of course, but also for anyone who wants to tell stories. Moore's got some great little tidbits in there, so highly recommend it. So, again, real quick, brush over my top 5, and these are, again, my top 5 favorite books on writing right now. I may change this down the road. I'll probably also do some more particular things in this series. Top 5 books on writing comics, top 5 books on writing screenplays, top 5 books on writing novels. There's all sorts of ways I can break this down, but these are just general books that I think every writer should read. Every writer should read all 5 of these books, as well as Stephen King's On Writing and Strunk and White's Elements of Style. But Bradbury, Zen and the Art of Writing. Stay drunk on writing. Get inspired. Zinsser, William Zinsser, On Writing Well. Good writing has an aliveness. It's got a life of its own. It should draw the reader in. Christopher Vogler, The Writer's Journey. The hero's journey is an observation. It's not something made up. It's not a structure applied to the world's experience. It is a structure that we draw from our experience of the world. This is the way story works because this is the way life works, right? The give and take, the up and down. The hero's journey is relevant to us because we see it and we go through it. It's the story of every single life that we're all trying to push ourselves to, right? The hero's journey is an observation. Saul Stein, Stein on Writing. We practice our craft to serve the reader. We're not here just to express ourselves. We're not here just to cough into the wilderness. We are here to serve the reader. We are here to give them an experience, to take them out of their normal everyday lives. And then, of course, Alan Moore, a successful story is like hypnosis. So Moore's writing for comics. A successful story is like hypnosis. How do you hypnotize with a story? Pick up any of those books, guys. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. If you do read them, if you have read them, please leave a comment below letting me know what you thought of those books. What did you think of my choices? Do you think that I put one in my top 5 that I shouldn't have, or I left one out of my top 5 that I shouldn't have? What is your top 5 or your top 1? What's your favorite book on writing? Let's talk about that. Go ahead and add to the discussion. In the meantime, if you want to read a little more about writing, I've got a link to a free little booklet, I should say, guidebook on creating characters. It's all about creating characters that you want to write and that readers want to read. It's going to give you a kind of a shortcut. It's only about a 25 to 30 page book. It's not very long. It's very I wouldn't say it's too detailed, but it's very workable. They're meant as a workbook, as something for you to apply in your writing right away. So I don't think it's going to supplant On Writing as a writing classic any day soon, but it is free, so I encourage you guys to pick that up and let me know if it helps you out. And yeah, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, please. Like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment below talking about what books on writing have inspired you, and I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.